My name is Gabriel, and these are the Secret Law Files. We are drawn here by the noise of the unseen world, but we stay because of the quiet terror of the known world, the moment a human hand opens the door and invites the darkness in. The files we track often speak in the cold, precise language of bureaucracy, treating monsters like mechanical failures and damnation like an inventory problem. Yet even in the most sterile institutional report, the tremor of human weakness, the fatal flaw is always visible. Today, we look at such a file, one that details the containment of an entity so insidious it doesn't need to break down the walls of reality. It only needs to wait for the inhabitants to surrender their own minds. This is the record of SCP-026, a school building that is more accurately described as a timeless psychological trap. It is a structure that consumes memory and identity, turning students and researchers alike into what the file calls ink-static, colorless projections within a never-ending dream. But the question is not how the anomaly achieves this. The only question that matters, is always, how do we help it? How does the victim, through fear or weakness or exhaustion, choose the sleep that leads to eternal assimilation? We examine the record of failure not to judge, but to understand the exact calculus of surrender.
This is Chief Inspector Martell, Internal Security Department. My personnel identification is F999073337. This recording is being logged under my authority as a Level 4, Class C operative. The purpose of this briefing is to synthesize the fragmented dossier concerning SCP-026 into a single, cohesive narrative summary suitable for high-level review. This report is now being transcribed for archival review. This case file concerns SCP-026, a Euclid-class anomaly manifesting as a 3-story public school building. The structure exhibits significant spatial, temporal, and mimetic anomalies, primarily centered around its ability to trap individuals, both physically and mentally, within its confines. The purpose of this dossier is to provide a comprehensive narrative summary of the anomaly's properties, containment history, and the associated procedural failures for Overwatch Command. SCP-026 is a public school building, reportedly constructed in redacted and declared condemned after its floor plan was discovered to be inconsistent with its own blueprints. The Foundation became involved following a series of disappearances linked to the location. The building's primary anomalous quality is its non-Euclidean interior. The internal space is substantially larger than its external dimensions would permit. Hallways and stairways exhibit variable lengths and step counts, and the number of rooms changes between observations. Initial assessments, as noted in the file designated Note 026A, suggested these were purely perceptual distortions. This was a premature and incorrect conclusion. Subsequent robotic and human-led explorations confirmed that genuine spatial phenomena are at play, a classic case of incomplete initial threat assessment. The interior is covered in graffiti which phases in and out of existence, changing location and content over time. Writings on chalkboards and bulletin boards exhibit similar behavior, displaying subjects ranging from mundane school lessons to esoteric concepts like quantum entanglement and, on at least one occasion, information pertaining to SCP redacted. The recurring phrase, "the children used to sing," has been documented numerous times, though its significance remains undetermined. A further containment risk was identified in what is termed Note 026B, where documents brought into SCP-026 have had their contents vanish, only to reappear as text on surfaces within the school. This demonstrates a clear information security breach vector. A significant number of unconscious human subjects have been discovered inside SCP-026. These individuals are typically of high school age, dressed in the school's former dress code. Several have been identified as former students or faculty who disappeared years after the school's closure. All attempts to rouse these subjects while they are inside the building have failed. Upon removal from the property, they awaken abruptly in a state of confusion before succumbing to catastrophic rapid onset dehydration and decomposition. No actionable intelligence has ever been recovered from these subjects before their expiration.
And here, friends, is where the horror ceases to be architectural and becomes utterly moral. Consider the terrible paradox. They are saved only to be killed by the act of salvation. The Foundation, in its cold efficiency, chose to prioritize data gathering, removing the subjects despite the certain agonizing death that followed. But who among us, faced with such a terrible boundary, can truly claim the moral high ground? This is the agonizing moment when duty becomes damnation, when the choice is not between life and death, but between a static, eternal sleep and a brief, excruciating moment of clarity before extinction. It is a pain the subjects did not choose, but which was inflicted upon them by the very people claiming to protect humanity.
This lethal effect extends in a modified form to Foundation personnel. As detailed in the document Incident Report VRO-2612, Agent Malik fell asleep within the building's main foyer and could not be awakened until he was physically removed from the grounds. He reported a vivid, recurring dream of being in a classroom, a dream now understood to be a consistent phenomenon for anyone who falls asleep within SCP-026's area of effect. The file also notes in Note 026C that several D-Class personnel who reported experiencing this same dream later vanished from Foundation custody, only to be rediscovered as unconscious subjects inside SCP-026. This confirms a direct link between the dream state and the anomalies capture mechanism. Exploration logs provide a clearer, if inconsistent, picture of the internal environment. The log designated Exploration Log 026 for details. An agent's initial reconnaissance. The agent noted the irregular spacing of doors and classrooms that appeared to belong to different decades. He discovered 3 unconscious subjects, or sleepers, and observed that a chalkboard displayed notes handwritten by another Foundation researcher, confirming the anomaly's ability to absorb external information. His attempt to traverse a long hallway resulted in a subjective experience of walking for hours before finding himself inexplicably back at his starting point. A basic failure to maintain the containment envelope, spatially speaking.
To be trapped in a space that defies logic is to be trapped in a constant state of doubt, unable to trust the ground beneath your feet or the horizon ahead. The agent finds himself walking forward only to arrive back where he began. Is this not the very nature of regret? The terrible cyclical curse of reliving the moment of failure, constantly moving but never escaping the echo of that choice? This endless hallway, longer than its physics allow, circling back on itself, is the architecture of a tormented mind. It is a coldness I know all too well.
Further exploration, documented in logs 02612 and 02615, utilized robotic drones. These logs noted that the graffiti had shifted, and that doors previously observed as irregularly spaced now appeared uniform. 2 new sleepers were discovered, one identified as a former student who disappeared at age 28 but was found de-aged to his teens, and an unidentified adult female. The final documented exploration involved an agent accompanying a drone to the 3rd floor. There, the hallway was perceived as being approximately 45 meters long, though the agent's subjective experience distorted this distance. He was unable to reach the end of the hall, stating he felt as though he was moving backwards at times. The robotic drone, however, traversed the distance without issue. It entered a door at the end of the hall into a perpendicular corridor that should not have existed. The drone's GPS placed it outside the building, yet its video feed still showed the hallway's interior. The drone then rounded a corner and reappeared at the beginning of the original hallway, directly behind the agent, who had not seen it pass. This event prompted the agent to terminate the exploration. The data implies the anomaly can create and collapse transitional spaces, a severe tactical problem.
The psychological impact on personnel is a critical concern. An interview transcript with Agent Walker reveals a significant protocol breach. Walker was part of the initial team and witnessed a sleeper expire upon removal from the site. She later experienced the characteristic classroom dream while sleeping in a transport vehicle outside the school's physical grounds. Citing fear of being disappeared like a colleague from an unrelated case, she failed to report the incident. Her testimony states, The dream has since recurred multiple times, and with each recurrence, it feels more real, and her dream self appears progressively less colored and more integrated into the black and white environment of the dream. This indicates the anomaly's influence is not strictly geographical and has a progressive assimilating effect. Her subsequent treatment with amnestics and return to duty was, in my professional opinion, a reckless gamble. This is the point of no return. The agent, terrified by what she saw, made the primal human choice, the choice of concealment. She chose the integrity of her career, or perhaps her immediate personal safety, over the truth that would have protected others. She failed to report her contamination, but it is not fear when overwhelming its own form of moral narcotic. She was not strong enough to face the potential consequence of quarantine, and in that moment of weakness, she consciously allowed the infection to take root. This is not just a breach of protocol. It is the definitive spiritual failure that allows the predatory entity, which craves assimilation, to claim its foothold outside the walls.
A document of uncertain origin titled "Welcome Home Again" provides a possible first-person perspective from within the anomaly. The narrative describes a high school experience where reality decays. It directly references the variable stair count, the quote from Nicholas Nickleby seen on a chalkboard, and the name Scott Malik, who is almost certainly the Agent Malik from Incident 02612. The text posits that the school is a static, timeless entity that feeds on memories and individuality, converting people into part of its fabric, which the narrator describes as ink. It concludes with the narrator being fully consumed by this process, stating, "You will sleep forever and this is your home." The following section contains analysis of supplemental documentation deemed to be of secondary, though still significant, relevance to the overall case file. These documents provide historical and psychological context for the primary anomalous phenomena. Article 1. Interview with former principal, redacted. Relevance claim. This document provides historical context for anomalous activity at the location prior to Foundation containment. Evidentiary summary. The former principal corroborates early anomalous activity, including the inconsistent stair count and reports of widespread nightmares among students and staff involving a school that never ends. He states this, combined with the discovery that the building's physical structure did not match its blueprints, led to the school's abandonment. He also reports still having a recurring dream of being in his old office, with a continuously ringing but silent school bell. Investigators note, the testimony is credible and aligns with currently observed phenomena, indicating a long history of activity. The principal's recurring dream suggests the anomaly can establish a permanent psychological link with individuals, even decades after exposure. Article 2. Interview with Agent Walker. Relevance claim. This document details the direct psychological effects of SCP-026 on Foundation personnel and highlights a significant breach in operational security. Evidentiary summary. Agent Walker requested a transfer due to recurring nightmares following her assignment to SCP-026. She admitted to experiencing the classroom dream after falling asleep in a vehicle outside the school, but failed to report it. She described the dream as becoming more vivid and immersive with each recurrence, noting a progressive loss of color in her dream self. Investigators note, this represents a catastrophic failure of individual responsibility and protocol. The agent knowingly concealed contact with a mind-altering anomaly. The decision to administer a Class A amnestic and return her to active fieldwork rather than place her in long-term quarantine and observation warrants an immediate internal review. This demonstrates a clear case of personnel compromising security out of fear. Article 3. Document. Welcome home. Again. Relevance claim. This document appears to be a first-person account from an individual assimilated by SCP-026, offering insight into the anomaly's subjective nature and possible motives. Evidentiary summary. The text is a disjointed narrative from a student named Nikki experiencing reality breaking down within the school. It directly references multiple confirmed anomalies, including the stair count, chalkboard writings, and the presence of Scott Malik. The narrative frames the school as a conscious entity that feeds on identity and memory, turning its victims into part of a collective, static dream state described as ink. The process is portrayed as a form of homecoming and eternal sleep. Investigators note the origin of this document is unknown, but its detailed correlation with verified anomalous phenomena is too precise to be coincidental. It should be treated as high-value intelligence. The text strongly suggests that SCP-026 is a sapient, predatory memetic construct. All personnel associated with the case should be screened for exposure based on the information within. Investigators note, the documentation suggests that SCP-026 is not merely a location with spatial anomalies, but a predatory memetic construct actively assimilating individuals with a reach that extends beyond its physical boundaries.
The school is a monument to stasis, demanding that its victims surrender their uniqueness. It feeds on the vibrancy of memory and identity, turning the individual into a collective stain, colorless, silent, and endless, the ink that defines its prison walls. But this eternal imprisonment required Agent Walker's consent. She was outside the structure, safe in a transport vehicle, yet she failed to report the dream. She feared the professional consequences of exposure more than the existential horror of contamination. And that, my friends, is the agonizing truth behind every moral fable. The creature outside only takes what the individual inside is willing to trade. She traded her color for perceived safety, only to find that safety was the illusion, and the dream, the endless, recurring classroom, was the reality. This is the curse. This is the moment we all dread, the flicker of weakness, the lapse in judgment, the silent compromise that we believe no one else will see. But the monstrous waits patiently for that compromise, because it knows that the most effective cage is the one we build for ourselves. When we choose silence over truth, when we choose the comfort of denial over the pain of responsibility, we are already halfway to becoming static, nameless ink on the wall of our own regret. You will sleep forever, indeed, and the choice was yours. May you find the strength to face the choice when it finally comes for you. Good night.